Because so many people talk about the uncertainty this year. There's a ton of uncertainty out there. We have so many people that are like, I'm just going to wait and see. I'm just going to wait and see. So, and then here's the stats that definitely show us that that's generally what happens. And I feel like we have a little more going on than we normally do.
Hi, I'm Kenny Klaus, and this is State 48 Homeowner.
Hello, my friend, and welcome back to the State 48 Homeowner Podcast. And today we're talking about the 6 ways presidential elections impact the housing market. And today we're with Twila Edwards, one of our best agents on the Klaus team. Welcome, Twila.
Hey, Scott, thanks.
So what was your first presidential election? Mine was 1992.
Mine was also.
Okay, so we're about the same age.
Yes.
So mine, we had 3 voters in my family, my mom, my dad, myself. And we came home from the election and realized that we had canceled each other out because it was Clinton, Bush, and Perot, and we all voted for a different person.
Oh, that's actually funny. So I lived in Baton Rouge at the time, and President Bush, I guess he wasn't president then, right?
He was president.
He was, yes,
yeah.
Okay. Flew in, and I happened to be leaving work, and someone was like, hey, President Bush is landing, and we got tickets. So my husband and I ran down there, gave 2 tickets to his aunt and uncle, and ended up running into them in this huge airport, and we got to hear the rally. So it was kind of cool. It's the only presidential rally I've ever been to, but it was very cool.
Now, when he was running, when President Bush Sr. was running the previous one, I got to be at a rally. I got to play Hail to the Chief for Reagan when he was campaigning for Bush.
Oh, very cool.
And so he was running. He was walking right behind the stands. So I stopped. I was playing French horn. I stopped, looked behind, and my buddy goes, "Hey, Ronnie," and he looked over. It was kind of cool.
That's very cool. Dated ourselves, but hey, there you go. It means that we've been around for a little bit and been through a few elections.
And some of the data that we're going to look at today does go back as far as 1980.
Absolutely.
And we were around then. And
but I think we obviously didn't understand what was going on. So it's interesting now as an adult to look back at that for sure.
And so some of the things that we've seen and the things that impact elections, a lot of uncertainty.
Absolutely.
Some policy changes and a lot of consumer unconfidence leading up to the election, and then some behavior that we see after the election. So let's look at some of the craziness that has happened on some of these elections. So 2008, we saw a lot of uncertainty coming up to it. In fact, if you remember in 2008, right beforehand, John McCain actually stopped campaigning just prior to go back to Washington because we had the global financial crisis.
Absolutely.
And so they actually kind of stopped campaigning in, was it August and September, and went and had to do some new bills and things because the housing...
We were in crisis.
Yeah, the housing crisis
absolutely.
was going crazy. And so that impacted the election. 2012, we were going off of what they called, remember, the fiscal cliff.
Yes, absolutely.
And the healthcare expansion review by the Supreme Court, European debt. If I remember right, Greece was just about to implode.
Yeah, I think so. Healthcare was a big part of that one for sure for most Americans. 2016,
we had Brexit.
Yep.
And you know, I went to, I think it was 2022, I went to London, and it seemed like they recovered fine.
Yeah, they did okay.
And so a lot of these things, it's like a crisis in the moment, but then we come, and I think that's what we're going to see with a lot of this housing data, is that it feels like a crisis in the moment, but then afterwards,
always recover.
We seem to recover.
Absolutely.
2020, what happened then?
Oh my gosh, can we even talk about that? Do we want to go there? So the global pandemic, right? I mean, we had 2 years of all of that stuff, and now we're recovered from that for sure, but it definitely had an impact on the housing market.
Yeah. And then 2024, we've got a lot of high inflation.
Yes.
We've got a lot of uncertainty as far as interest rates. We've got a lot of war going on.
Yeah.
A lot of different places. So let's talk about the first big thing that we see happening in elections. When do they happen?
So usually November. November's usually a slow month. I think that's when, I mean, we've all been watching them out campaigning and doing all that things, but all of a sudden November comes and people go, wait, this is really happening now. So we definitely see a slowdown in November, historically. The good news is usually December, it's like, okay, we're over and done with it. We're going to get back to work. So December, usually things start to pick back up again. And then that following year after an election, is usually a good thing. I know we had kind of a scenario we were talking about, like during the election, people are like, maybe I won't McDonald's or going out to dinner, right?
So if there's let's say maybe there is a hurricane or something, you can't leave the house. You were planning to go to McDonald's, and then guess what? You can't leave the house. You're going to eat at home. McDonald's is going to miss out on those purchases.
Absolutely. They
They're
miss out
never
on all those
going
sales
to regain
during that
them,
time.
right? If you were planning to buy a new cell phone or a tablet and you were going to go to the AT&T store and pick those up, whether it's a Samsung or an iPhone or something, you're still going to make those purchases. They're just not going to happen that weekend.
Absolutely.
You're going to make those a little bit later. So we kind of see that. Al Lord, founder and CEO of Lexer Capital Management, says presidential election years affect the national housing market and mortgage rates through three interrelated channels: uncertainty, policy expectations, and consumer confidence. That's because consumers may choose to postpone major purchases or sales until they gain greater confidence in the country's direction. And then Ali Wolf, chief economist from Zonda, says in December, following election, and in the following year, the sales that are lost during November are recovered. It isn't that consumers say, I'm nervous and I never want to buy. They say, I'm nervous. Let's just wait and see how things pan out. So we kind of wait. And we've seen that. It's kind of weird that we've looked now on the Klaus team. We kind of have a little microcosm of data. So we've got all the MLS data in Arizona. We've got a scope of all the data that we see across the country. But then we do enough data and we do enough sales here on the Klaus team that we can kind of see what happens just within our world. And we always kind of see things happening in October, and then we just see a drop in November. And then it just kind of seems like about like the third week of November, things kind of start to spike. And then December, all the stuff that slowed down in November seems to spike. In fact, most Decembers for us are low. We have fewer transactions generally happening in December because of the holidays. Not a lot of people like to move in the holidays, except for election years. Our Decembers in election years tend to be a little bit higher. Why? Because we're combining November and December.
People held off in November waiting for December.
They're going to catch up in December.
Absolutely.
So every year we have a November slowdown, but we recover in December.
Absolutely. And then what do we see the following year? Home sale volume jumps the year following an election. You can go back to the graphs, and aside from Reagan and 1 year of Bush, they've gone up since 1980. We've had more sales the following year after an election.
So 9 of the last 11, the home volume. So the number of people transacting real estate jumps.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we'll see that again because so many people are talking about the uncertainty this year. Mm-hmm. There's a ton of uncertainty out there. We have so many people that are like, I'm just going to wait and see. I'm just going to wait and see. So, and then here's the stats that definitely show us that that's generally what happens. And I feel like we have a little more going on than we normally do. So
yeah, my kids and I, last weekend, it was my birthday, we were playing some games at home. And one of the things that we were playing some craps. We were playing some dice games and stuff. And they were rolling the dice. And I think one of the things that people are doing right now is they're waiting to roll the dice to see on rates. And they're waiting to make big decisions on whether to sell. And then, of course, to buy, because a lot of people that are waiting to sell are waiting to also buy, and they're making those decisions on what's going to happen, especially regarding rates. And those are going to be based on policy decisions. So they're waiting based on that. And so once the election happens, like we've seen and what we've discussed is really, no matter what happens after the election, people are going to make a decision. So we see those numbers jump.
Oh, absolutely. I was just kind of glancing down at our graph here to see the percentages, and it's just consistently going up, which is nice. I wouldn't even try to guess at what percentage on this one, but definitely you can see every one of them, 9 of the last 11. And actually, it's 8 of the last 9, which I think is kind of cool. It's great to say 9 of 11, but 8 of 9. So since 1984 was the last, 1988 is the last time we had a dip. So.
Yeah, and including the crash, which is, something that we got to point out there.
Yeah, right? The fact that we didn't then is pretty amazing.
Which, now, volume, that changed. Now, as we go and look at that resale prices, number 3, resale prices rise in the year following the election. That happened 7 of the last 8. Now, the year that didn't happen was that crash back in 2008. So every year except that year, right after the election, existing home prices, that's resale homes, those prices rose after the election. The only year that didn't happen was the crash. Now, it's generally a moderate rise, except COVID. We saw a pretty significant rise. But there was a lot of things at play there, especially, rates artificially cause some things to happen.
Absolutely.
But normally we see, as you can see from the chart on the screen, we see some moderate rise in prices. And so we see not only more transactions happening, but an increase in prices. And where else do we see that increase in prices?
Oh, new builds and resale homes, for sure. We looked at it. It looks like they're both pretty comparable, but definitely resale and new builds definitely.
So number 4, new build prices going up as well.
Yep, absolutely.
So yeah, new build home prices went up 10 of the last 11 presidential elections. The only year that it didn't was 2008.
Right after the crisis.
And what did Ryan Lindquist say?
An election year doesn't alter the price trend that is already happening in the market.
That's crazy.
That's crazy, but it's true. I mean, I think people, like we said, have the uncertainty and they get really nervous. But at the end of the day, they're still going to buy a house. Things are still going to keep on moving forward. We all still need a place to live. We all still need a roof over our heads. So.
And stick around. We'll talk about rates in just a second.
Hey everyone, this is Kenny Klaus with Klaus Team Real Estate Solutions. We know there's a lot of confusion in today's market, whether it's billboards, TV, radio, mail. Everyone's trying to get your attention. They offer one lane, where at the Klaus Team, we have over 20 different programs. We can help you navigate through to find out what's best for you. And remember, we work for you, they work for themselves. We're here to represent you and make sure you have the best experience possible.
Visit us at klausteam.com/call us first. So Twila, talk to us about rates.
So rates right now, we've seen a little bit tick down this week, which has been kind of exciting. Historically, mortgage rates have decreased leading up to the election. 8 of the last 11 presidential elections, mortgage rates have decreased leading up to it.
So July to November. Which they're all going to say that the president and his cabinet and his election campaign and all those people, no matter what party, they never have anything to do with it. And yet, what do we see? 8 of the last 11, what happens?
It goes down. And not a whole, 1984 went down a point, which let's talk about, 1984, where were rates. So they needed to come down a point.
Down. And look at some of these rates, by the way.
Oh, yeah. 1984, it was 14.6, and then it went down to 13.6.
Yeah, folks, if you're complaining about rates, let's go back to this chart.
Yeah, right. So most of them have been a moderate change in rates, but it's not enough. And we know right now in the market, it comes down a little bit, and people are excited.
Yeah.
So in 2020, was the only time. Yeah, it came down then. Sorry, 0.25.
Yeah. So we saw a little tick up in 2016. We saw a little tick up in 1996, and we saw a little tick up in 1980. But generally, we see those rates coming down. And what are we seeing right now in July of 2024? We're seeing those rates
tick down. Super slow, but they're definitely ticking down. We're below 7s.
Yeah, we're below 7s. This is midweek. Before the podcast is going out. So I don't know what's going to happen here on...
Make sure we put that out there. Put the disclaimers in there.
We are on the 16th. But we've seen the rates ticking down. So we do see a correlation there.
Absolutely. And again, not that they say it doesn't have to do with anything, but 8 of the last 11 elections, we've seen that tick down.
Mm-hmm. So number 6, the big one. For most Americans, what do we see?
So I would say for most Americans, election results will have an immediate effect on their income, and therefore they should not significantly impact the decision to buy or sell a home.
And that's quoting bank rate?
Bank rate.
Yeah.
So I think immediately, like we talked about, everyone is like kind of that uncertainty, what's going on, but give them a month or two after the election and people are going to be back up buying houses.
So we see these trends, and yet in the grand scheme of things, people, like we saw with a lot of those things, even like Brexit and those things that we mentioned before, we have these big crises, but we do tend to return to that sense of normalcy, and people do tend to make those purchases.
Well, and I think it just takes time. Everyone's going through their crises. I mean, look at 2020. We had COVID going on, right? But everything has settled back down. And I think, again, after this election, the same thing we're going to see.
And so if you are ready to make that purchase and maybe get ahead of things, you can reach out to us at klausteam.com/call-us-first. Thanks for spending time with us this week at State 48 Homeowner, the ins and outs of owning an Arizona home. You can connect with us for more information, submit topics you'd like us to further discuss. You can see relevant videos, give us feedback, answer your real estate questions, and more at state48homeowner.com.